Hello there. Welcome into a Thursday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that app is sponsored by the good folks at Diversis Health, mental health, and well-being for all. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you. And if you have an opinion on those sports topics, I would love to hear from you. 719-247-1313 is both the text and the phone line. I can also be found on X at Gingerly Tweets. You know, there's a reason why you set deadlines, or there's a reason why deadlines exist. Because the existence of deadlines, either real deadlines or, I don't want to say imagined deadlines, but official or unofficial deadlines. The reason why they exist is so business can get done. And what we have seen, not just with the Denver Broncos, but across the National Football League in the last 24 to 48 hours, is the fact that training camp is starting. Many rookies have reported. Veterans are set to report in the coming days as well. That's a deadline. Now, there are some real deadlines in terms of the veterans in getting extensions signed and things like that. But there's a number of different kinds of deadlines, but they all have to do with training camp. And we have seen more business get done in the National Football League, I think, over the last 24 to 48 hours than we've seen for the last few weeks combined. Now, as the Broncos are concerned, the night before rookies were required to arrive for training camp, Jahdae Barron signs his rookie deal, one of only 2 first-round picks that had not signed their deal. In fact, there are now no first-round picks who have yet to sign their deal because even the Bengals got Shamar Stewart signed. And then today, Mike Kliss is reporting that R.J. Harvey, one of the, as when we last spoke, 30 second-round picks that had yet to sign their rookie deals, he signs his, as well as a handful of other second-round picks. The logjam is starting to break up a little bit. The terms for R.J. Harvey, 4 years, just shy of $7.4 million. Very much a slotted second-round pick deal. Now, what we saw with the Texans signing Jaden Higgins was a bunch of second-round picks that wanted guaranteed money. And NFL teams had one of 2 options if they wanted to get these guys signed. One, give them the fully guaranteed deal. Or 2, figure out something else to offer in the stead of a fully guaranteed deal. Broncos don't want to give out the fully guaranteed deals. Talked about that a lot over the last couple of weeks, haven't we? Not about that. So what they gave R.J. Harvey, according to Mike Kliss, was almost half of his year 3 salary is going to be guaranteed. 47.7%, if you want to be exact about it, is going to be guaranteed. So not a fully guaranteed deal, not even a fully guaranteed year in year 3. But it is 47.7% more guaranteed than anybody picked where R.J. Harvey has been picked before. So the Broncos did go did kind of break tradition a little bit. They caved a little bit, but they ultimately don't give R.J. Harvey a fully guaranteed contract, nor did they give Jahdae Barron a fully guaranteed contract. We are now finding out what at least the Broncos gave Barron in order to get him to sign. We don't know if this is what Barron was holding out over, or not. When I say holding out, I mean not signing his deal, because he was showing up to rookie minicamp. I don't know if it was the holdup with the deal or this was just the thing that the Broncos offered, but Jahdae Barron will get the entirety of his signing bonus this year. Not spreading out the signing bonus. So we have seen with the Broncos, and you see it elsewhere in the NFL, not everyone wants to do the fully guaranteed contract thing. But we are seeing some things within these contracts that are not usual. But like I said yesterday with Jahdae Barron, I'll say the same thing with R.J. Harvey. All of that stuff is just if you want to geek out a little bit. It's kind of interesting to me anyway. The bottom line is R.J. Harvey, Jahdae Barron, full speed ahead. They are Broncos. They put pen to paper, and they are fully Denver Broncos now as we're day 2, maybe the first real day of training camp for the rookies. Another note that Mike Kliss pointed out that R.J. Harvey apparently did miss yesterday, maybe missed today. But, I mean, think about this in terms of the first day of school. How much work did you get done in the first day of school? So, if Barron and Harvey were not there yesterday, if Harvey wasn't even there today, I don't know that he's missing a lot. For the bulk of training camp, even for the bulk of the time that just the rookies are there, R.J. Harvey and Jahdae Barron are going to be there. They're not falling behind. So we don't have to factor that in when we're starting to talk about these guys. They're not falling behind. And they're in there, and their contracts are signed. So, as I did yesterday with Jahdae Barron, let's talk about R.J. Harvey and what is to be expected from him. I don't look at R.J. Harvey the way I look at certainly Ashton Genty in Vegas, not even the way I look at Omarion Hampton in LA. I think that, and part of this is, what happened to Najee Harris, the injury he's sustained over, I believe it was the 4th of July. But I don't look at R.J. Harvey as the player that either Genty or Hampton are. And I also don't think Harvey will have as prominent a role as those two guys. I think with Genty, he's the dude. You could put Ashton Genty in a tier by himself. There's not a single other running back in this class that is as important or as prominent with their franchise as Ashton Genty is with the Raiders. Okay, so he's in a class by himself. With Omarion Hampton, maybe Quinshawn Judkins, although Judkins has some issues off the field now. But these are guys that I think their teams are banking on them a little bit more to contribute than maybe the Broncos are R.J. Harvey. And I also think that Judkins and Omarion Hampton are better players than R.J. Harvey. And in terms of players, I'd even throw Travion Henderson, the other Ohio State running back, above R.J. Harvey. There was a time this offseason where it looked like R.J. Harvey had a chance to be the number one running back, the top of the Broncos depth chart. And then they signed J.K. Dobbins. And I think you put Dobbins in that spot and say he automatically becomes the most trusted running back in that room. He becomes option one. But we know the way that Sean Payton likes to do things. Okay? No one in that room is a bell cow back. No one in that room is a 3-down back. It is pretty much a running back by committee, but there has to be a guy when the Broncos have to convert. A guy they trust maybe on first down. You know how big of an issue it was last year with the Broncos getting off to good starts on either drives or sets of downs, right? A lot of second and longs that they got themselves into. The guy that right now I think Sean Payton is going to look to and say, this is the guy I'm going to trust, it's J.K. Dobbins, just as Jim Harbaugh did last year in L.A. Now, where R.J. Harvey fits in is that he could be the guy to spell J.K. Dobbins. He could be that second guy. But I do see some overlap with what R.J. Harvey brings to the table and what Audric Estime brings to the table. Ultimately, what they both do best is they are difficult to tackle. And that's clearly an archetype that Sean Payton wants in his running back room. Because 3 of the 4 guys that we're going to talk about as training camp rolls on, maybe we'll talk about Bidet a little bit or some of these Blake Watson, but ultimately the 4 guys we're going to discuss the most are Dobbins, Harvey, Estime, and Jaleel McLaughlin. And 3 of those 4 guys have a reputation of being difficult to tackle, are able to get extra yards after contact. Not Jaleel McLaughlin, but the other guys. So, but McLaughlin has his utility as well, right? Being able to get out on the edge a little bit more than any of these other guys. So when I look at this running back room, and if you want to call it a competition, call it a competition, I kind of feel like not necessarily for the roster, but just for how Sean Payton divvies out these carries, I think it's kind of Harvey or Estime. Because Sean Payton has already said, hey, look, it's hard to give 3 running backs carries. Somebody is going to lag behind. With Jaleel McLaughlin, because of who he is, I think he's an easy one to say he's going to be used in very specific situations. But in terms of who spells J.K. Dobbins, who's the next man up, if Dobbins either doesn't produce or gets hurt, I think it's between Estime and Harvey. And I think you could take into account where they were drafted, but I think in Sean Payton's eyes, he looks at both of these guys and believes in them almost in equal amount. So I think therein lies the competition. I don't think anybody supplants J.K. Dobbins unless J.K. Dobbins gets hurt or is just, and we've seen this with NFL players, production falls off a cliff. J.K. Dobbins is option 1. J.K. Dobbins is the veteran. J.K. Dobbins is the trusted back in that room. What Sean Payton tried to make Javonte Williams, wanted Javonte Williams to be last year, but he wasn't that guy. J.K. Dobbins is 1. Jaleel McLaughlin is used in very specific situations. I don't think you see Jaleel McLaughlin on the field as much as you did last year. And then the real battle is kind of between Estime and R.J. Harvey. And I don't think that either one of these guys truly profile as a number one back. If J.K. Dobbins is just for 1 year, or if J.K. Dobbins falters early in this year, I still think that the Broncos will be actively looking for someone else. I don't think that Harvey has the potential of an Amarion Hampton. I won't even bring up Ashton Genty, but Amarion Hampton, maybe even a Quinshawn Judkins or Travion Henderson for that matter. But he's going to have a role in this backfield because Sean Payton likes to spread the wealth as much as he can. But RJ Harvey does not catch the ball particularly well out of the backfield, doesn't pass block. So I think right now you're looking at him is if J.K. Dobbins is not on the field and it's not a special situation where Jaleel McLaughlin's speed and ability to get to the edge is what the Broncos want most, will it be Audric Estime or RJ Harvey? And I take your thoughts on who you think ultimately that guy will be. 719-247-1313, RJ Harvey, along with every other Broncos rookie, locked and loaded, ready for the start of training camp in earnest up there in Denver. Just getting going on this Thursday edition of the show. Coming up next, somebody's working out in Vegas with the Denver Nuggets. Tell you who it is and the significance of it next here on Extra Sports 1300. The Black Keys are hitting the road for their No Rain, No Flowers tour, and we want to send you to the U.S. tour stop of your choice. Just text the national keyword release to 95819. That's RELEASE to 95819. Prize provided by Live Nation. And for more info and for contest rules, just go to extrasports1300.com. From Drewski, who is coincidentally from the 719. Speaking of corners in Denver, could PS2 get Sauce Gardner type of contract in the near future? Was I speaking about corners? Oh, yes. I did mention Jahdae Barron. I spent a lot of the time in the first segment on RJ Harvey. Okay, I get where you're going, Drewski. The short answer is no. And therein lies the beauty of the piece of business that George Paton and Pat Surtain, don't forget to give the player and his representatives credit. That is the beauty of the piece of business that they were able to come together on. And I talked about this yesterday. The Jets, for whatever reason, I don't follow the Jets like I follow the Denver Broncos, so I don't know if the Jets tried to get Sauce Gardner signed earlier or not, or they just waited. But the longer you wait, the more it's going to cost you. Check out the Pittsburgh Steelers today. They have had to, again, make TJ Watt the highest paid non-quarterback in the National Football League. The longer you wait, the more you're going to pay. The Broncos knew what they had in Pat Surtain, which you would think the Jets would. I mean, I am definitely on the side that Pat Surtain is the best corner in the game. In the ESPN's poll of NFL personnel people says that Pat Surtain is the best corner in the NFL. But like Sauce Gardner is elite. I don't know what the Jets were waiting for. Maybe it was Sauce Gardner. But the Broncos were able to come together earlier to get Pat Surtain signed, and now you look at it, it's not just that Sauce Gardner has surpassed him. Derek Stingley surpassed him. He's, in terms of the metrics, he's either, in terms of total dollar amount, the fifth highest. I like to look at the percentage of the cap because that's what GMs look at. Pat Surtain is seventh in highest percentage of the cap that a corner takes up. And to your question, Drewski, the potential out in the contract, not that either party would be looking to get out of the contract, not until after the 2027 season. I mean, we haven't even hit Pat Surtain's extension yet. That's next year. So there is an out in between the 2027 and 2028 season. That's when I expect there to be a conversation coming up again about extending Pat Surtain. But again, we're in the year 2025. His extension hasn't even kicked in yet. So that just adds to the fact that Pat Surtain is one of the biggest bargains in the National Football League. Broncos knew what they had. Pat Surtain knew he wanted to be here, and the two sides came together, got something done, and now George Paton looks like a genius. Which, to that end, I want to throw a question out, and we'll get into this more in depth in a little bit. You have seen the front offices of the Broncos, the Avalanche, and the Nuggets make some moves over the last calendar year. My question is, which GM or GMs in the Nuggets case do you trust the most? As all three of those teams, and I'll throw in the Rockies just so for laughs, right? Because they're the other major sports team, lowercase m on major. But they're all striving to win a title. They all have a thought that they can win a championship. Which general manager or general managers do you trust the most? George Payton, Ben Tenzer / John Wallace, or Chris McFarland? You got some thoughts? Send them my way, 719-247-1313. I'll give my thoughts on that subject coming up a little bit later. But in the meantime, let's hear from one third, I guess, because of Josh Kroenke's role, 1/3 of the Nuggets front office. That is John Wallace. He and Ben Tenzer sat down for separate interviews with Nuggets media. And there was something that John Wallace said that plays perfectly into some videos that the Nuggets social media team posted today from Vegas. First, listen to John Wallace about now that all these moves have been made, what is his role now and moving forward going into the season for the Denver Nuggets?
I mean, you're still watching, you're still evaluating, you're still trying to find ways to get 2%, 3%, 5% better. And kind of keep your ear to the streets as to what's happening. But at the same time, you have to make sure that you keep in touch with the guys who are already on the team. With the European games coming up, with guys who are out here working out, such as Jamal. So it's really instilling that leadership aspect from their point to have more ownership within the team dynamic.
That last part is what I want to seize on. He mentioned Jamal Murray is in Vegas working out. Nuggets tweeted out videos of Jamal Murray working out. And it's when it's him, it means a little bit more, doesn't it? Because therein lies the big question with Jamal Murray. He has a reputation for playing himself into shape during a season. Is he going to come in for day one, game one in October, and be ready to roll? If him going out to Vegas to work out with the team staff is any indication, it's possible Jamal Murray has finally gotten the message. Because it was a message that was delivered to him a year ago by Calvin Booth and Michael Malone. They singled him out and said Jamal Murray needs to get his body in a place where he's more resistant to injury and more able to bounce back if he were to get injured. Basically, be more available. Be more available, but even more so than that, because we know Jamal Murray will play through a lot. His toughness is not in question here. But be healthier. I mean, when's the last time that we have talked about Jamal Murray and not had to throw in the caveat of he's dealing with insert malady here? He's sick. He's got a shoulder. He's got a knee. He's got an elbow. He's got a hamstring. And a lot of that is just how in shape you are when it comes time for live games. When the intensity level's up, the physicality's up. If you're not completely in shape, turns it into a problem. So this message, this is not a new phenomenon with Jamal Murray. And it's something that the Nuggets have taken public. in the last calendar year. What I wonder now, especially hearing John Wallace and seeing Jamal Murray, the message was right. There's no doubt about that. Was the messenger wrong? Or the messengers wrong? Part of the reason the Nuggets hired John Wallace and the thing they keep going back to, relationships. John Wallace has a great reputation and strong relationships throughout the NBA. Early on, it manifested itself to get some deals done. Although the more I'm thinking about it, I kind of wonder if Ben Tenzer, if we had to split the credit, maybe Ben Tenzer deserves a little bit more. Either way, they both get a level of credit for it. But John Wallace, the relationships thing, and listening to that clip, John Wallace was in Denver when playoff Jamal became a thing. And remember, there was bubble Jamal, and most people think that's kind of the genesis of this alter ego of Jamal Murray, if you will. Think back to a year before. Think back to Game 7 against the San Antonio Spurs. That was the first sighting of Jamal Murray being a different cat from what he is during the regular season. And it was that got the Denver Nuggets to decide we're going to lock this guy up before we have to because we see it. Now, the Blazers series didn't go very well, as you recall. And then the pandemic happens, they go in the bubble, and Jamal Murray puts on some of the greatest performances we have ever seen a Nugget put up in the playoffs. John Wallace was in Denver during that time. If John Wallace's strength is relationships, I don't know that there's a relationship outside of Nikola Jokic that is more important than Jamal Murray. Not because he might leave or anything like that, but because he's the guy that needs to be nudged a little bit. That the message can't fall on deaf ears. And I wonder, coming off the lips of Calvin Booth or Michael Malone, it was falling on deaf ears. Remember, Jamal Murray in the last couple of years talked about, in a joking way, David Adelman's terrible, nobody hire him. Jamal Murray loves David Adelman. And he might love John Wallace. So when those guys are the ones now challenging him and not Malone and not Calvin Booth, perhaps the message is received a little bit better. But either way, the message needs to be received. Because we can talk about the Nuggets' depth now. And we could talk about the development of the younger players, and we could talk about the more reliable three-point shooting and what kind of a step Christian Brown will take this upcoming season. But none of it matters if that two-man game between Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray is not one of the most unstoppable things in the NBA. And we've seen it. Everything the Nuggets do stems from that two-man game. And if Jokic and Murray aren't close to 100% in terms of their level of play, their health, then all of this other stuff, it doesn't really matter as much. Now you can blitz Nikola Jokic. You could cheat a little bit more on him. Or guys don't get the open looks. It starts with Murray and Jokic. And the last couple of seasons, especially in the playoffs, Jamal Murray hasn't been right. He had his moments in the Lakers series. He had moments in these playoffs, but just not like 2023. And that's what it takes. Oklahoma City is a juggernaut. The Houston Rockets were a better regular season team than the Denver Nuggets, and then they added Kevin Durant. Minnesota has been a pest for the Denver Nuggets. And now Luka's in LA and so on and so forth. The West is getting better. Every day the West gets better. Wemby and the Spurs are coming. Portland's even got their own Nikola Jokic that they're developing. Like, it's not going to stop. It's not going to stop. More teams are going to get better. And the thing that the Nuggets have, it's not Christian Brown, it's not Aaron Gordon, it's not their bench. The thing that they have that none of these other teams have is that two-man game. When it is working, when both guys are playing at their highest level, no one's stopping it. No one. But the Nuggets haven't had that in 2 years. So I know we do this best shape of his life. Look at this guy working out. This is the season of workout videos. This is the season of he's in the best shape of his life. And I'm not just talking about Murray, and I'm not just talking about basketball. We do this across all sports. It's July. Is Murray showing up for workouts in August and September? But this is a good sign. This is a good sign that Jamal Murray is taking the ownership that you just heard John Wallace mention. He wants the players that exist on the Denver Nuggets right now. He wants them to take more ownership. This is an early sign that Jamal Murray is getting the message. And maybe another reason why John Wallace is in the co-pilot chair with Ben Tenzer. And David Adelman's the head coach. 719-247-1313. Of course, it could be all of this from Jamal Murray could be because he sees what you and I see, and that's the Denver Nuggets angling for another superstar. Talk about that next on Extra Sports 1300. The Denver Nuggets, this is not a new phenomenon if you listen to this show. I've been talking about it for weeks now, but it's coming to the forefront a little bit more. The Nuggets clearly angling for the potential addition of a superstar. Get to that later. That superstar will not be Damian Lillard, though. Let's get to some breaking news from Shams Charania of ESPN. Damian Lillard has decided on his next team. And it's his old team. Damian Lillard is signing a 3-year, $42 million contract to go back to Portland. That surprises me. Because I thought Damian Lillard was going to go to a title contender. And I do like what Chauncey Billups is building there. I see the vision with Yang Hansen. And I was a big fan of Scoot Henderson. So I like what Portland's building, but the idea that in the way they got to get in line. And Damian Lillard's smart enough to know he's not going to take Portland over the top, right? They got to get in line behind OKC, Houston, Denver, Minnesota, LA with Luka, and LeBron now, but Luka, they hope moving forward. San Antonio. Like maybe they can jump New Orleans or Sacramento. But this isn't a move to say, I'm going for a championship. This is a move from a guy who, after fighting it for years, right? How long had we been trying to get Damian Lillard? Like, dude, get out of there. They're wasting you. And he kept resisting, and finally he relented. And then he got shipped to Milwaukee. And with all due respect to that fine city, he didn't want to be there. He didn't want to be in Milwaukee. Even though he was in a better position to try and win a title. And that Milwaukee Bucks duo of Damian Lillard and Giannis, we'll never know. We'll never know. We didn't see it. And whether it would work or not. But I think while he was in a place that he really didn't want to be, he was removed from his family. And it's something that he talked about. And now he's, through that experience, I think it just made him further realize that at this point in his life, chasing rings is not what he wants to do. Not if it takes him away from his family or lands him in a spot he doesn't want to be in. And I thought maybe Denver could kind of be the best of both worlds. But this is clearly Damian Lillard landing on the side of, I went over to the other grass. It wasn't greener. I was miserable. I want to go where I am an icon in a city that I am beloved. And I want to be with my kids. And Damian Lillard and I live very different lives, but one thing that Damian Lillard and I have in common, we're both divorced dads. And I can understand the emotions that Damian Lillard probably felt being halfway across the country. And I can't sit here and chastise Damian Lillard like I'm sure some people are going to. Oh, he doesn't want to win a championship. He's not serious about winning. Maybe it's not his main motivating factor. I think that's fair. Clearly, it's not if he's going back to Portland. But it's about his family and his lifestyle. And I can't sit here and criticize Damian Lillard. He didn't really want to leave Portland in the first place. He hung on till the bitter end there. Multiple years, everybody, including me, but people with larger microphones and louder microphones than mine were saying, Dame, go. He didn't want to. He loved being in Portland. And now, for the first time in his career, he became a free agent through some, unordinary circumstances. But he was free to go wherever he wanted. And not that Damian Lillard would be a guy that could, with the questions about him coming off of the Achilles injury and he's getting up there in age, I don't know that any fan base could look at Damian Lillard as some kind of savior or anything like that. But, I mean, any team that has a real chance of winning a title, Houston, Denver, Minnesota, Golden State, anybody who thinks LA, anybody who at least even thinks they have a chance to win a title with already some pieces in place would love to add Damian Lillard, especially with the fact that the Bucks are picking up the tab. So it's not like Damian Lillard sent out feelers and the NBA was like, yeah, we don't want you. There's no way I believe that. I don't think there was any shortage of teams. And I think the reporting that will come out of this is that there were multiple title contenders. Boston was interested in him. He wanted to go home. He wanted to spend the end of his prime going into the twilight of his career comfortable. But it is a fascinating juxtaposition with ring culture, isn't it? So if forget who created ring culture, LeBron, just acknowledge ring culture exists. If you are somebody that says you don't want to subscribe to that, then you should be celebrating Damian Lillard's move because he's being loyal to a team, a city that drafted him, that he grew up with. He's choosing his family. But there will be some that will say that Damian Lillard is not serious about winning a championship. But here's another counter argument. If Damian Lillard were to go, let's say Denver, okay, he'd be the veteran backup point guard, ball handler that John Wallace has said is still a need for the Denver Nuggets. What kind of a title is that? Is Damian Lillard going to get credit for that? If he goes to Minnesota or Houston or OKC or Denver and he wins a title, is he going to get any credit? They're going to say he went ring chasing, that he piggybacked onto a team that was already ready to win. They're going to discount that championship. And maybe that's part of of the decision making from Damian Lillard as well. It's like at this point in my career, wherever I go, I'm going to be looked at as being a ring chaser. And maybe there's some self-realization that he can't elevate a team, or he won't be able to once he comes back from this injury at his age. He's like, you know what? I'm going to go back to Portland and I can lead a very young team. And maybe we can do some things. I can get back into the playoffs in the next couple of years. And who knows? With all these young guys, maybe they caught lightning in a bottle. I'm surprised by the move. But as I think about it, in some ways, good on Damian Lillard. You know, we're hoping that Nikola Jokic remains as loyal to Denver as clearly Damian Lillard is to Portland. So Damian Lillard going back to the Blazers. And man, not that this is important, but just as an aside, 3 years, $45 million, and he's getting all of his money from Milwaukee. The one thing I'll say, if Damian Lillard's going back to Portland, that's fine. Just get a bigger house, dude. How much money are you getting this upcoming season, these next 3 years? Treat yourself. 719-24-7. 1313. Coming up next, TJ Watt, the best pass rusher on the market. Not really on the market, but the best pass rusher that was set to be paid, got paid in a major way. So does that mean the Broncos will be paying their pass rusher in short order? Welcome in. Great to have you. Appreciate you tuning into the show or watching the show, which you can do on our social media platforms, Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube. The handle, all the same, at XTRA Sports 1300. If you would like to participate in the show, as Drewski did, you can text, call into the show, 719 247 1313. TJ Watt is once again the highest paid NFL player that is not a quarterback. Adam Schefter reporting that he's getting a 3-year, $123 million extension that includes $108 million guaranteed at signing. The $41 million per year average is the highest of any non-quarterback in NFL history. And it just goes back to what I talked about at the beginning of the show, based on the news that RJ Harvey has signed his rookie deal, apparently getting more of the third year of that contract guaranteed, more of that money guaranteed. That's what the Broncos gave him in order to get him signed. Now the Broncos' entire draft class is signed, but it goes back to the idea that deadlines matter. Right? When you tell somebody you want to do something, you got to set a deadline. That's why New Year's resolutions don't work. There's no deadline. You're just saying this year I want to do this. Well, this year is 365 days. When are you going to get it done by? With training camp starting up, with deadlines to get extensions done coming up, the Steelers got it done. Not that there was ever a doubt. The idea that they would let this drag out and TJ Watt would, maybe not be a Steeler. Come on. We can talk about the decisions that franchise makes on the other side of the football. They know defense, and they are smart enough to know that whatever TJ Watt wants, they'll give it to him. There was some negotiating room, but come on. The Steelers were never going to let TJ Watt walk out the front door. Because he and that Steelers defense are the reason why Mike Tomlin continuously finishes with a winning record. Right? And that's kind of part of the reason why I can't necessarily drop the Broncos way below what they were last year, because I think that their defense is going to be so good, arguably the best in the NFL, and the Steelers have proven that if you have a good head coach and you got really good defense, you're not winning a Super Bowl necessarily, but you're going to keep your head above water. And without TJ Watt motivated, they weren't going to be able to do that. Their defense was not going to be as vaunted as it normally is. But it's done. TJ Watt, again, the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. Now, to localize this story, I do think this sets the cap for any potential extension that Nick Bonito or Zach Allen may get. And it is a high. I don't think either one of those guys are going to even come into the same orbit as TJ Watt, nor do either of them deserve to. But now you have a number to work off of. Right? And it's not saying that Nick Bonito has to come in right underneath him. Right? Like I said, TJ Watt should be paid a ton more money than Nick Bonito. But in terms of the percentage of the cap and some of these other things, the Broncos can work off of that, and Nick Bonito and his representatives can work off of that. And Zach Allen, same thing. I do think that this gives a Bonito or Zach Allen extension a little bit more, greases the wheel a little bit more, I guess. I do think it's reasonable to think that maybe conversations will pick up a little bit. But it's not because Benito's going to be saying, give me TJ Watt money, or Zach Allen's going to be saying that. But some of the things in this deal and the dollar figures, it at least gives, and going back to Myles Garrett's deal too, gives other teams something to work off of. But I go back to, especially with Bonito, go back to what I said yesterday. Nick Bonito is such an interesting case because for all intents and purposes, he just showed up, right, as an impactful pass rusher. He is a second-round pick, which means the Broncos don't have that extra year runway where they can just pick up his fifth-year option. So it's forget about the fact that TJ Watt deserves exponentially more money than Nick Bonito. Like, it's apples and oranges when you even talk about the types of players they are. TJ Watt's been doing this for years. Nick Bonito did it a year. But TJ Watt is a pass rusher. He's technically in the same market as Nick Bonito. I think that the uniqueness of Nick Bonito's situation is more why there hasn't been a lot of movement. Maybe the TJ Watt extension can help move it forward a little bit, but I think what's really holding it back is it's very difficult to assign a dollar amount to Nick Bonito. But yet, speaking of deadlines, there's a deadline coming up. And I don't think that the Denver Broncos really would like to franchise tag Nick Bonito, because that's going to be a big chunk of money, because he is a pass rusher, and pass rushers get a big chunk of money in a franchise tag. So they are coming up on a deadline. And I don't think that they feel last year was a mirage. I think they feel like last year is the start of something. But how, with Nick Bonito, you truly are pricing it based on what you expect him to be, because you have such a small sample size of what he is. So it's a difficult kind of situation that the Broncos find themselves in. Nick Bonito, TJ Watt, he is not. Zach Allen, TJ Watt, he is not. But in many ways, they have the same job title. So perhaps this helps those negotiations out a little bit more one way or another. Other pass rushing news. I know this, broke the hearts of many in Broncos country, but I had been preparing you for this, that Von Miller was not coming back to the Denver Broncos. And last night he signed a 1-year deal with the Commanders. And what's ironic in a way about this, for as long as Broncos country has held out this ridiculous hope that Von Miller was actually going to come back to them, this actually would have been the year that it would make sense from Von Miller's perspective, right? Because I kept saying Von Miller's not coming back with the Broncos getting ready to boot Russell Wilson out the door, or with a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix. He only wants to compete for Super Bowls. And not that the Broncos are a Super Bowl contender, but they're pointed in the right direction. Right? So you couple the fact that they're pointed in the right direction with Von Miller's obvious affinity towards Denver, that this year, for the first time since he got traded, it actually made more sense. But here's where you take heart if you're a Broncos fan. The reason why Von Miller is not a Denver Bronco is not because Von Miller wouldn't have been interested in the Denver Broncos. It's because the Broncos don't need him. They're good. They have Benito. They locked up Cooper. They want to see more of Jonah Ellis. They don't need to take a flyer on Von Miller, and that's what this is. This is a flyer that Washington is taking, a team that really needs to take some flyers. Right? They need to hope that Von Miller's got one more productive year in him. Broncos don't need to do that. They're good when it comes to pass rushers. Washington isn't. Washington's in a position where they got to take a chance on a Von Miller, and I don't blame them for taking that chance. Now, is it going to work? Von Miller has as many sacks over the last 3 seasons as he did in the last 2 when he was in Denver, and then he split time between Denver and LA. And he's going to a team where he doesn't have as much support in terms of other pass rushers as he did in Buffalo. And he is at a stage in his career where every year that goes by, you lean in a little bit more. Is this it? Is this it? He's not young anymore. He's not in his prime anymore. But if I'm Washington, one, what's the harm? Right? You have a huge need when it comes to this. You have money because you have this rookie quarterback. It's a 1-year deal. Give it a shot. And I think the best case scenario actually for Washington is if they get back to the NFC Championship game. Crucial third down against other NFC contender X. Let's just call it Philadelphia. Critical third down, not third and short, because I don't think Von Miller helps with the tush push. But let's say 3rd down and 5. Jalen Hurts drops back. Can you get one of those Robert Ory clutch moments from Von Miller where he summons everything he's got and puts up a swim move or trucks a tackle and gets to Jalen Hurts to put Washington into the Super Bowl? I think if you're a Commanders fan, that's what you envision. Double-digit sack Von Miller, ooh, that's asking a little bit much from him. But he has shown over the last few years, even after the injury, that, hey, still got, as a pass rusher, that clutch gene. That clutch gene he had in Super Bowl 50, he still got it. I think that's what you're hoping if you're Washington. Not consistently throughout the season, Von Miller, leading the league in sacks or creating a vaunted pass rush. but he's an upgrade over whatever they had at that position. And they are a team that fully expects to not only be in the postseason, but advance deep into the postseason. Somebody that's done it before, somebody that has a knack for coming up large in the biggest moments. That kind of a player is appealing to Washington. And we'll see. This could be it for Von Miller. He did have to sit on the unemployment line for a while. This could be it for Von. We'll see. He signs a 1-year deal with the Commanders. 6 sacks in 13 games last year for Buffalo. Take your thoughts on it. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, not signing Von Miller. I think a good decision by George Paton. Has he made enough good decisions to make you trust him more than any other front office executive in Colorado sports? The DoD Warrior Games have returned to Colorado Springs with men and women representing the Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, Space Force, Coast Guard, and Special Operations Command, all competing in a variety of adaptive sports at Colorado College's campus. Support the resiliency and dedication of military service members at dodwarriorgames.com. The opening ceremonies, if you will, are Friday. I believe powerlifting begins on Friday, but just a multitude of events starting on Friday and going all the way through next week. I'll be doing the show out there every day next week. Looking forward to it very much. I hope to see you out there. If you think about the last year plus in Colorado sports, in terms of now no championships, so this is a better question to ask now than maybe 2023 or 2022, right? Because there's a little recency bias, I think, at play there, and a little championship bias. But now that none of the four majors, Nuggets, Avalanche, Broncos, Rockies, are coming off of a title. Okay? They're all pretty removed, some more than others, from a title. This is a good question to ask now. In this last year plus, there's been a lot of significant movement from, I'll say, 3 of the 4 teams that reside in Denver. 3 of the 4. We're going to include the Rockies because. And if you want to make a case for Bill Schmidt, oh my gosh, I am all ears. Which general manager or general managers do you trust the most? George Payton, on his watch, the Denver Broncos drafted Bo Nix. And this offseason, they have added key veteran free agents in Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga. Broncos have had a good offseason. Nuggets with Ben Tenzer and John Wallace. Their first go-round with an offseason. Don't know how they could have done better. Jonas Valanciunas. Bruce Brown comes back. Tim Hardaway. And the move to get Cam Johnson, and maybe more importantly, but not in a mean way, get Michael Porter out of Denver. Chris McFarland, not a lot going on this offseason, but makes the flurry of trades he did last year and was able to lock up Brock Nelson and bring him back to further this experiment. So if I told you to pick one, and maybe it's just best, maybe that's the way you vote. You just say, this is the best GM or GMs in Colorado sports. I'll rank them, and I'll see where you are. At number 4, obviously, it's Bill Schmidt. But let me tell you why. As if it needs any explanation, I'm going to explain myself, just to be fair. He has presided over the worst stretch of Rockies baseball ever. Say what you will about Dan O'Dowd. Say what you will about Jeff Bridich. The Rockies have never been worse, haven't been less talented, haven't been more embarrassing at any other point in their franchise's history than they are in this current moment in time. And I'm not just talking about being on track for the worst season since 1900. I'm talking about last year losing 100 games. He is presiding over the worst stretch of Rockies baseball we have ever seen. He got nothing in return for John Gray and Trevor Story. He has let the value of Ryan McMahon and Herman Marquez deteriorate year after year. They've actually had pieces that they could move to help stimulate their rebuild, and they've just been sitting on them. Two, and let's remember where Bill Schmidt came from. He was the guy drafting players. Brendan Rodgers, Riley Pint, absolute busts. There are 4 first-round picks on the Rockies roster. But Pint and Rodgers, until these last 2 years with Charlie Condon and now Ethan Holiday, Rodgers and Pint were the highest draft picks the Rockies have had in a long time. And he whiffed on both of them. One of those 4 first-round picks that are currently on the team, Chase Dollander, has a 6.68 ERA, which in many ways, not a nice ERA. You've seen Jordan Beck improve from last year to this year in year 2. But now he's a marginal big league player instead of not a big league player. So just in case you need the reason why Bill Schmidt ranks last and you should not vote for him, there you go. I could go on, but there are other GMs I want to talk about. This is where it gets very interesting. Number 4, I'm dead set on. Number 1, I'm dead set on. This is where it really gets difficult. And I have to put John Wallace and Ben Tenzer at number 3. And here is why. I love what they have done this offseason. But 2 things. 1, these guys haven't stepped on a court yet. And also Calvin Booth made a couple of really good moves right out of the gate. Again, I'm talking about trust here. We haven't seen all of these moves on a basketball court yet. And we have recent history in which we thought Calvin Booth there was no drop-off between Tim Connolly and Calvin Booth. It was just the good times kept on rolling. Nuggets won a championship because of the addition, in some part, because of the addition of Bruce Brown, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. And then everything he did since then was objectively terrible. So if you're asking me to fully trust this dual GM, I give them their flowers for what they have done this offseason. I can't. All we can go on is what we have right now, and they made a bunch of great moves, including the most significant is the Brooklyn trade. And that has the chance for the Nuggets to reap the rewards of that for years to come. So I'm not down on anything the Nuggets have done this offseason. But there are a lot of big decisions coming up. And they are both in a position in an organization they have never been in. So I can't. Now, the difference between them and Bill Schmidt, it's a mile. Right? Let me be very clear about that. There are worlds apart. There's a distant fourth. But I think I would go McFarland and Payton over Tenzer and Wallace in terms of trust level. But I really went back and forth about Tenzer and Wallace and the guy at number 2 on the list, which is George Payton. Because with George Payton, and if you're thinking about, you know what, I'm going to say George Payton. Love the offseason. They drafted Bo Nix. What were some of the decisions he was making before Sean Payton got there? Do you trust George Payton or do you trust Sean Payton? You have to, and it's hard to know. It's hard to know. But when you really think about it, who are you placing your trust in? I think it's more in Sean Payton than it is George Payton. George Payton did trade for Russell Wilson. Let us not forget that. Did he, do we give him credit for cutting bait? In some part, again, how much did Sean Payton have to do with that? But you know what? George Payton signed the paperwork. I'm sure there was paperwork. He signed it. He got out from under that thing. Credit to him, right? Don't double down on your mistakes. But he made the mistake in the first place. I think where I can definitely give George Payton credit and where you can place trust in him, he has hit pretty good on his draft picks. Pat Surtain, not that it's shocking that a guy taken in, the top 5 of his draft is one of the best players in the league, but we have seen guys drafted in the top 5 that bust. He got Pat Surtain right. He looks like he has Nick Bonito right. The number of players that he has taken later, the Jonathan Coopers and the Baron Brownings. Don't forget Drew Sanders, who I think is one of the players to watch this year. I think he's going to emerge for the Denver Broncos. He's done, all in all, very well in the draft. So with Peyton, he has, he does have some stains on his resume, unlike Tenzer and Wallace. But we've also seen his decisions actually move the needle forward for the Denver Broncos. And even though Bo Nix, I think, was Sean Payton's guy, George Payton's in that room. There's a sliver of credit that you can carve out for Bo Nix for George Payton. A sliver. So I would go him number 2. I think number 1 is easy. I think when you look at the totality of what they have done, I think you have to rank Chris McFarland number 1. I think you have to trust him more than anybody else. It doesn't mean you have to trust him with everything, right? This isn't blind trust we're talking about here. All of these general managers are completely fallible. And I'm still not sold on the Mikko Rantanen deal being ultimately in the best interest of the Colorado Avalanche. But part of what I have said about that trade is at least I see the vision. At least I understand what Chris McFarland is trying to do. My thing would be maybe find another way, and also a little better bedside manner probably would have been called for given what Mikko Rantanen had done for the franchise. I would have preferred other options to be exhausted before you traded one of the bedrock players of your organization. And as of right now, the Avalanche are no closer to winning a Stanley Cup, right? Much like Tenzer and Wallace were early in this, but it has to be said. The Avalanche did not get closer to winning a title this year. But I understand what he's trying to do with it. There's some merit to what he's trying to do. But over the course of his time, everything that he does, I think there's a justification along with it. I think there's a reason for everything. I see the reason for everything that he's done. I think that's important. He doesn't make any moves where you go, I have no idea what they're trying to accomplish with this. I get everything that the Avalanche do. He has been very good about, with a couple of exceptions, Mikko Rantanen obviously most recently, but they'll argue they needed to move on from him. It wasn't about not being able to sign him to a contract, it would be best that they didn't. We could talk about Nazem Kadri versus Valerian Nichushkin the rest of the show. But you see the type of player that Nichushkin is. You understood the finances of it all at that time. But most of the time, he's able to lock guys up to contracts. And yes, he was on a treadmill with the second line center for a while. But he got Brock Nelson. You like the move. What did he need to do? Sign him up. He did. So I think it's all of these guys have their blemishes. All of these guys have things that you can knock them for. I think when you add it all up, and it's not totally surprising that one of the longer tenured GMs is getting a nod here, but I think if I'm a fan of any one of these four teams or a fan of all four of them, I think the most trust should be placed in Chris McFarland. Take your thoughts on that. 719-247-1313. You know how Ben Tenzer and John Wallace can skyrocket up the list? By landing Luka? Talk about that next. We got less than 2 days left in our Black Keys contest, where if you text the national keyword, you're entered for a chance to see the Black Keys on their No Rain, No Flowers tour in the U.S. tour stop of your choice. The current national keyword that you should definitely text to 95819 is release, RELEASE. Text that to 95819. That is our last national text keyword of the day. There will be new keywords tomorrow. So be listening all day long for those national keywords. Text them in, and you have a chance to see the Black Keys at the U.S. tour stop of your choice. The prize provided by Live Nation. And for full contest rules, you can go to extrasports1300.com. Just posted the question I posed in the last segment on our Twitter account at extrasports1300. Which Colorado GM do you trust most? Bill Schmidt? Don't make me laugh. George Payton? In some circles, they're calling the Nuggets front office Ben Wallace. Chris McFarland, George Payton. So far, George Payton getting some early love. I'm going Chris McFarland. Take your thoughts. I do want to get to this. I've been putting off the Luka thing. I'll talk about Luka, don't worry. But did you watch the ESPYs last night? And I have to admit, I did not watch them. I consumed what happened in much the same way that you probably did, and that is on social media with clips. Far be it from me to say, I'm not saying anything negative about Suni Lee. Suni Lee, if you're listening, I'm not saying anything negative about you. Big fan. How Gabriel Landeskog is not the comeback athlete of the year, I have no idea. So who won the awards, not that important to me. Shane Gillis, because everybody's got to kind of weigh in on this. And where I am on the spectrum of reacting to Shane Gillis last night, he was funny. It was funny. I didn't think every joke landed. I didn't like every joke that he told. Some I thought were a little cringe. And maybe me saying they were cringe is cringe. I don't know how any of this works anymore. I didn't love everything that Shane Gillis did. But he was, who are we comparing him to? Was he Norm Macdonald? No. And even he knew he wasn't Norm Macdonald because he did, an OJ joke as a nod to Norm Macdonald. I think Shane Gillis knows he's not Norm Macdonald. But we're comparing Shane Gillis to Pat McAfee. Shane Gillis was exponentially funnier than Pat McAfee was when he hosted. There were good jokes in there. And there were jokes that were of local interest. This one, I thought, was very funny.
Shedeur Sanders had his jersey number retired at Colorado this year, and people are saying it's because of nepotism, because of his father, and it's not. It's because he went 13-12 over his career, and he almost won the Alamo Bowl. Definitely not nepotism, right? All right.
Even Lamar Jackson thought that was funny. They went to Lamar Jackson. He had to put his head down, but he had a smile on his face. It's funny. It was a dumb decision. It was nepotism. Like, we can all acknowledge this. And that's a funny joke. And the best one, like it or not, I know it rubs a lot of people the wrong way. I didn't like every WNBA joke that he told. I did not like everyone. The one where he pointed out his friend's wife and duped the entire room into thinking that she was a WNBA player, like that was tremendous. Because you know that there are people that support the WNBA, but maybe not by actually watching it. And as somebody who does watch the WNBA, I'm protected. I knew what the clip was going into it. If I would have watched it live, I would have been like, who's that? I don't know that person. Now, am I bragging? No, I'm just saying sometimes the people that are offended by jokes are the ones that are kind of being called out. But I thought that was funny. Again, there were some that were. One thing I'll say was Shane Gillis last night. Like, dude, you got to own every joke. Like, you can't sit there and like, I didn't write this one. No, you're performing. Some of the jokes that you told that people liked, you probably didn't write. But that's the way this all works. Like, everyone thinks that, Peyton Manning, when he did like the Comedy Central roast, like, you think Peyton Manning sat up the night before writing all those jokes? No, he had a writer write them for him. But that's the way this works. Right? You think all your favorite actors are these amazing romantic people that can come up with just poetry off the top of their head? No, it's being written for them. They do a great job of delivering it, but that's the way this all works. So if you're going to take credit for the ones that maybe you didn't write, and I don't know which ones he didn't write, other than the ones that he said he didn't write. But that was there were a few jokes I didn't like. There were some that were, went over a line, I thought. But with comedians, like, they should be allowed to get up to that line sometimes. Right? Not to turn this into some big referendum on the state of comedy, but like, these are people that should be allowed to push it up to that. And it's fine if they cross it and you go, I didn't like that. That's fine. And you listen to comedians talk, like, they will acknowledge that sometime, I went that one, I shouldn't have done that one. But the basis of the profession is you're allowed to experiment, you're allowed to push it a little bit. You don't have to like everything that they say, but if you're not allowing them to experiment and to push towards that line a little bit, you're going to miss out on some great jokes that are maybe just inside that line. And there were a few of those from Shane Gillis last night, but own everything. Own every joke. Because I'm sure there were some jokes that people loved on social media last night that Shane Gillis didn't write. Did he write the couple of beers skit on SNL? Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But I know SNL has a whole crew of writers. That was a great SNL skit, couple of beers. But I thought Shane Gillis was good. And it's kind of that thing, if you got kind of both sides of the aisle upset at you, then you're probably doing something right. And I'll say this without going too much deeper into it. Like, I think there are people that think that Shane Gillis is something and is on some side. He's really not. I think some people didn't get some of the jokes last night, but overall, I thought it was very good. It's funny. The Shedeur one was good. The pointing out his buddy's wife was really good. I think he pushed it too much with the WNBA. Too many WNBA jokes. They didn't all hit, but a lot of good jokes in there. Take your thoughts. If you watched or you just consumed the clips, 719-24-7, 1313. Back to the question that I posed in the last segment, which GM or GMs, because we have to do that with Tenzer and Wallace, which, let's just say front office would be easier. Which front office do you trust the most? Bill Schmidt with the Rockies, George Payton with the Broncos, Ben Tenzer, John Wallace with the Nuggets, or Chris McFarland with the Avalanche? This coming in from the 719. Did you just Avs GM first and then Nuggets GMs? Like I said, I go Chris McFarland first and then I go George Payton. The thing about Tenzer and Wallace, it's not that I'm down on him. It's that we were really high on what Calvin Booth did when he took the reins. And if this is about trust, who do you trust moving forward? We're just kind of burned by the last guy that we fell head over heels for when he made a couple of moves to finish off a title roster. So it's early. I think George Payton has done enough good as the Broncos GM, even though there have been a really big swing and a miss with Russell Wilson that could have destroyed the franchise. Could have set it back years. Like, that's on him. But at least we've seen some of his good decisions actually on the field and producing and helping the Broncos get pointed in the right direction. Now, as for the second text, same texter, did you just admit that you watched the WNBA? How's that going for you? Fine? I enjoy it. Is that a bad thing? Because I'm not somebody that says if you don't watch the WNBA, you're a bad person. I don't believe that. Everyone has their taste. I really don't watch baseball anymore. And I don't chastise people that don't watch hockey, even though I'm telling you, if you watch hockey, you're going to love it. I tell everybody. But it's fine. Different strokes for different folks. Yeah, it's fine. I mean, the news of the day, which I'll get to a little bit later regarding the WNBA, is a major bummer. But no, I'm working out just fine. It has adequately filled the void I have in my summers for live sports that I used to occupy watching baseball. It's funny how different texters are in lockstep. Tom says, do the Rockies have a GM? Fair. They do have somebody that technically has that job title, so I included him. But your point is well taken. From the 719, the Rockies don't have a front office. They have a business office whose intent it is to raise money for the owner. Yeah, they're definitely the wrong answer. Like, I will hear arguments for any of the other three being the most trustworthy, except that one. But hey, if it allows me to just bring up the litany of inaction and terrible decisions made by Bill Schmidt, then I'm going to take that opportunity just to make sure that he is disqualified from anyone voting for him. You never know who's tuning in. Maybe somebody's like, I think Bill Schmidt's doing a good job. I don't know who they are. I don't know what impairment they have, but or where they've been, because I don't think there's anything that Bill Schmidt has actually done as a GM that could be good. Is there one player? Is there one trade? I'm really having a hard time figuring that out. But we include them, and we include the Rockies so you can have the texts that you are sending in, which are great. From the 719, George Payton has made a team that is good enough to beat bad teams. And that's why I said I think it's Chris McFarland by a wide margin. I do. I have to put George Payton over Tenzer and Wallace. But again, I asked the question when it comes to the Denver Broncos, if you're thinking of voting for George Payton, is it George Payton that you trust, or is it the other Payton that you trust? Continue to take your thoughts after this, the three stories that are driving the show.